I'm Sid Luck. I'm a fifth generation potter from Seagrove, North Carolina. My family has made what they call ware here since the 1860s. And prior to the year 1900, and even after that, most of the pottery was made by old farmers in spare time. And that included my family. They called it ware. They were functional things that people used every day in their everyday life, like jugs and crocks and pitchers and plates and cups, that sort of thing. And they developed techniques that were much faster than they had been prior to the 17th, 18th, 19th century. They learned to do pottery or ware on spinning wheels like this one. They didn't have electricity, but they had treadles that they could kick it and provide the force to turn the wheel, as well as then making the piece. So they were called, most of them tried to do production as much as they could, as fast as they could. So during the 1700s, when America was being settled by the primarily English but European people, they began to have slaves and the like, and become more efficient, I guess we'd say. But an old potter would, if he worked all day doing the same things over and over again, that gets sort of boring. And this is my idea of how face jugs came to be, because a jug was a very, very popular item that they made for storing liquids in and serving liquids from. But if a guy had made jugs all day, that got kind of boring. And I'm guessing that at some point somebody came up with the notion that they wanted to do something crazy to break the monotony of things, and so they put a face on jugs. And that was true not only here but in Europe and maybe across the world. But the first face jugs that were discovered in the southeastern United States were possibly made by slaves that had been brought here by the Spanish slave traders. And that trend, that notion, that idea was has hung on in our culture for many, many, many years. Some of the first ones, as I indicated, were made by slaves, but the white people did them too, and the idea of these held on even after slave times. The white potters, especially in South Carolina, in Edgefield, South Carolina, a lot of them were discovered, and so people carried it on after slave times. White people did in that area, and it moved into Georgia. Big potters in Georgia, old farmer potters would make face jugs, and they're they're basically just a form of curiosity, or not necessarily functional, although they would be to some degree. They might be a little less functional if they didn't have, without the face. But we kept that idea hung around, especially as I indicated, South Carolina, Georgia. Then it moved up into western North Carolina, around Asheville. And then from there it moved on across to the central part of North Carolina, which is Seagrove, is in the central part. And particularly in the 1960s, around that time, there became a lot of interest in face jugs, people collecting face jugs, and mostly professional people had the money to spend for things that were not necessarily useful, but for decoration or simple pleasure. So that's how face jugs sort of came to be, in my view, in this area. Nobody in the Seagrove area, most of my life, made a face jug, but Dorothy Allman made the first one I've ever seen in this area sometime in the 60s, the 1960s, that is. Okay, so that's what I'm making here is a jug, and I will eventually put a face on it. But to show you how to do a face jug, when I get done with this one, I have one that I've already turned, and I will put a face on it. But the reason I wouldn't use this one is it's too soft and would cave in. I would end up marring it up kind of bad. Yeah, that's what I mean. That can be edited out. A jug is one of the more difficult things to learn how to do, and it still offers a little bit of a challenge to me. I have made pottery since I was 10 years old. I'm now 75, so that's about 65 years, I would say. But I still like making jugs. It's my favorite piece to do. Maybe because it still offers a little bit of a challenge to me. In my younger days, in my teen years and pre-teen years, I worked at my cousin's place because my dad didn't really, he was more interested in farming and would occasionally fire up the old kiln and make some flower pots. But the Coles, my cousins, the Coles, they operated full-time from like the very early 1900s all the way up until 2000. They operated as a more or less commercial pottery, but they made mostly after the 1920s and 30s. They made They made more decorative things for the Pinehurst area, which is just south of here, who were well-to-do people, moved from the northeast to get away from the nasty weather up there in the wintertime. built homes down around Southern Pines, Pinehurst, and would spend their winters down here and go back home for the summer. This is almost a jug. I'm putting my mouth on it now. My family always put a little, I guess you'd call it a lip, on the top of the jug. So that's a squatty little jug that would be nice for a face.
Very nice.
Now, I will dry my hands and get that all out of the way. Hands dry, kept them wet while I was spinning. Get them dry and I don't have to put a lot of inward pressure. I can just reach and it sticks to my hands and pick it up.
Very good. Thank you, Sid.